Bismillah, as-salatu was-salam ala Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum everyone. Today I'm going to be taking a look at this very famous quote, supposedly by Ustad Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, and see if it's actually by him or not. This quote, as you may have seen, is used very often by people who are convinced he is not a Muslim as proof that he's not Muslim. So today, inshallah, we'll be looking at this quote, taking it from this meme or this, let's say, internet formatted quote, and finding the original Persian text, going layer by layer, inshallah. So we're going to start. Not Christian or Jew or Muslim, not Hindu, Buddhist, Sufi or Zen, not any religion or cultural system, etc. For those of you who are familiar with the way medieval people thought, you can immediately tell that this poem is by a modern person. The biggest giveaway is the concepts of Zen and Buddhist. They wouldn't really be in Rumi's cultural sphere. They wouldn't be on his mind. He would be unlikely to talk about those things. And also the concept of a cultural system. This is a very modern idea, the idea of a cultural system. Of course, what we think of when we mean cultural system did exist at the time, but the idea of conceiving of it or speaking about it this way is very modern. But of course, this is not going to be enough of an evidence against people who bring this quote, because if I just say, in my heart this feels non-medieval, they'll say, well, of course you don't agree with it. So inshallah, we'll actually prove that this is not authentic. So how do we go about doing that? The first step when you want to look into any Rumi quote, again, if no source is given, it just says Rumi, but nothing more, is to Google the words. So I've Googled the words, and just look what pops up. So we'll go to the first website. There's no citation given. It's just Din Rumi. That's useless. So I go in the second one. It says it's called Only Breath, and it's by none other than our friend Coleman Barks, translating the Essential Rumi, San Francisco HarperCollins. So I have a copy of the Essential Rumi, so I'll just copy the name of the poem so we can get to it quickly. And I have the Essential Rumi right here. So we'll find the poem, and here we are. This is the poem in question. And then we'll go to the source. So thankfully, Coleman Barks does provide the sources of the poems that he quotes. Only Breath, from a translation quoted in Pir Velayat Khan's The Message in Our Time. So I happen to have Pir Velayat Khan's The Message in Our Time. And I did find it says it's quoted in 426. So I'm just going to jump ahead to that page. It's towards the very end. And it says, here we are, this is the poem we're looking for. I'm neither Christian nor Jew. However, no equivalent Persian text is given. There's only this little 3 citation. So we're currently in chapter 26. So I'm just going to jump ahead to the notes to save you all time. Of course, the actual process took a long time, digging through archive.org to find the PDF and find the PDF of the book and etc. But I'm just going to give you guys the crash course, inshallah. So go to the source, and here we go. So this is a red flag. It's just source says Jalaluddin Rumi Mathnavi. So this is a big red flag and basically proves to me that this is a false quote. Why? First of all, when you're quoting a poem from a very large work, this is a Mathnavi, I have it, a very large work, you don't just put Mathnavi. You quote the page number, the line number, the poem number, you quote something. I mean, imagine if I told you something and I just said, Al-Quran al-Kareem, without the surah, ayah, with no contextual information, not the juz, nothing. I just said it's from the Quran, right? So that's the equivalent of this. So if we look at the Mathnavi, for those of you who haven't seen it, you'll notice that it's not written in the ghazal format. It's written in the Mathnavi format, which means that every line rhymes with itself. So, bishkanam, bishkanam, band, bekhand, etc. There are no ghazals in this book. The poem we're dealing with is a ghazal. So basically, what this tells me is the person who's quoted this poem has no idea about Rumi's works. Because if they knew about his works, they would know that there are no ghazals in this book. To give you an equivalent example, imagine if I told you, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, and you said, wow, subhanAllah, this is beautiful. And you said, where is it from? And I said, it's from Surah Al-Baqarah. But this is a hadith found in Bukhari. It's not in Surah Al-Baqarah. Or what if I told you, if I read the Fatiha for you, for example, and you said, wow, I love that, where is it from? And I said, it's from Muslim, Tirmizi, Bukhari. You would think, wow, this person has no idea what they're talking about. If you're talking about a poet, etc., and you don't know the source text, even the differences between them, you're absolutely not someone we should be taking Rumi from. If you're dealing with a sheikh who doesn't know the difference between the Quran or Bukhari, you definitely should not be taking Islam from such a person. So, khair, we know that this person is definitely not our source for Rumi, but we'll continue forward. So this is not useful, but we did get the original translation text as we have here. So I was able to search that in Google Books, and I found that it's actually very old. The first instance was in 1819, but there is no source given here, as you can see, no Persian text. That is a dead end. So I'll move on. The third source, same story, no Persian text, no source, dead end. Then we'll go to the third one, which is a recent book by Shahab Ahmed, What is Islam? So he has actually provided a source, the source text, and where he got the translation from. Now, I think this is a time to pause for a quick footnote to just speak about how the Orientalist mindset circles back into the Muslim mind in our modern era. So as you see, this poem dates back to 1819, literally in the Orientalist era, the colonial era. Some colonial British guy like on Sufism, Mohammedan mysticism has basically invented this poem in translation. And now a modern Muslim, academic is quoting this. So modern Muslims in 2017, 2018, 2019 can read this poem. And basically this forgery can circle back into the Muslim mind. But it's repackaged, right? If you were to see this original poem, let's say, written in a book from 1819 by Sir William so-and-so, you would think, okay, this is, colonial, this is Orientalist. Look, they're calling Islam Muhammadan. Of course, a Muslim would know better than to take Islam from such a book. But you have this book, What is Islam, by Shahab Ahmed, I believe a Harvard professor. Of course, this is a resource we should take seriously. And look, it's even got the quote in the original Persian with a resource. I mean, without a doubt, most people would just say, okay, this is legitimate. Why even look deeply into this? It's from a legitimate publishing house, legitimate writer, associated with a legitimate university, a source, etc. However, this book did prove to be a valuable stepping stone in this long journey, because not only did it give us the original Persian text, but it actually gave us the citation for where the translation he used came from. So I have jumped ahead, we can just close this, to the book that he has quoted, and we can just go straight to the page where the poem is from. Now, one thing I will say is, this is the Cliff Notes version of this whole research journey. So if this video ends up being 10 or 15 minutes long, know that it was an hour, 2 hours of research, because, of course, there's no control-find key for these old books. I had to flip through all the pages of the Pir Velayat Khan book, and I had to flip through all the pages of this book, and etc. But inshallah, we'll move on. So here's the original Persian text, finally, what we've been looking for this whole time. And he writes, what is to be done, O Muslims, for I do not recognize myself. I am neither Christian, nor Jew, nor Gabr, or Muslim. So one thing that's an interesting practice for me is to look at the Coleman Barks and to compare it to what is actually presented in the original translation. If you notice something, the first line of this poem is, what is to be done, O Muslims? For I do not recognize myself. But Coleman Barks actually took that out because he didn't want the readers to know that the poem was addressed to Muslims, or perhaps he didn't want the readers to feel that it didn't apply to them because, of course, the majority of his readers are not Muslim. See the de-Islamizing? In the first poem, even though it's a fabrication, Rumi supposedly, but actually whoever wrote it, is addressing the Muslims. He's saying, Chitadbire Musalmanan, what should be done, O Muslims? But here, Coleman Barks, wanting to remove Rumi, or not even Rumi, but what he thinks of as Rumi from his context, has removed O Musalmanan, because he doesn't want it to be just for Muslims. He wants it to be for everyone, because of course, to him, Rumi is not just a Muslim poet. He belongs to everyone. So subhanAllah, you can just see how this has been removed. And again, he's changed it. So he changes Gabr, which means Zoroastrian, and he's made it Buddhist, Sufi, or Zen. He's just totally made this up. I mean, the word Sufi is not even in here. And not any religion or cultural system. Again, not sure where cultural system came from. It doesn't exist in the Persian or in the English translation, which I will say this English translation is pretty much 100% accurate and literal, to credit where credit is due, even though the poem itself is inaccurate. So basically, we've seen Coleman Barks has taken a poem that's not by Rumi. He's used a source that doesn't even bother to provide a source. So he's using wrong sources that basically, you don't even need to know Persian to see that there's not a real source given. And he's also changed the poem quite a bit to make it de-Islamized. So subhanAllah, I mean, what can we even say? So, but in any event, we found the original text. Chitadbire Musalmanan. So I wrote it down. And I'll just take the first line. And I'll search in Rumi and Ganjur as we've done before. And, of course, no result will come up. So that's that. I ended up typing in the original English text, the original English text, and I put it into Google, and I was able to find that Ustad Ibrahim Gamard of the Molavi Tariqa has actually done quite a bit of research. He's basically found the same thing that we found. And this is very important. This is basically the main refutation of this poem. Comments. These verses are not by Rumi, as proven by the fact that these are not found in the earliest Persian manuscripts of Rumi's Divan, such as in the critical edition in 10 volumes by Firuzanfar. For this reason, when A.J. Arbery retranslated the poems in Nicholson's selected poems, he did not include the poem that contained these verses. Nicholson, the man who wrote this book, mind you, where the poem is from, admitted the original text does not appear in any of the editions or manuscripts used by me. Nicholson must have personally believed at the time that the poem was not authentic, even though he had no manuscript authority. However, this poem is clearly a kind of forgery that pretends to be one of Rumi's ghazals, etc. So basically we kind of conclusively know by now that this poem is not by Rumi. In the last video, someone asked, why don't you actually look at the original Rumi text and prove that the poem is not by Rumi? So I thought in this video, inshallah, I would do that, but I'll do a quick change in camera angles so you can actually see the inside of this book for yourselves and judge what you're seeing, because the webcam does not really do a good job of showing that. All right, so we have Rumi's Divan here. This is Kulliyat Shams Tabrizi, etc. So this is the book where all of his ghazals and other poems are contained. In the beginning of the book, we have an index of all the first lines of all the poems. So if you remember just a second ago, this is the beginning from Aleph, etc. The line that we're looking for is Che tadbire musalmanan ke man khud ra nemidanam. So if we want to find a poem that ends in the letter mim, because it's khud ra nemidanam, it ends in mim, we go to harf mim. And the way this is organized is all the poems that end in one letter, so the letter mim in our case, are put here in the mim section. But then inside the individual section, they're organized in according to their first letter. So for example, this poem ends in mim, right? Atashi az to dar dahan daram. But the first line is Aleph and Aleph kolahdar. So that's the first letter in the Persian alphabet. You can see all of these poems are Aleph kolahdar until they're out of the Aleph kolahdars. And then it goes a normal Aleph, and then Aleph Ye, etc., then Be. So basically, in order to find that poem, if it were here, we would have to go to the memes, which we're at, and find the Che. So here we have Chera, Chand, Chun, and then here's the Che. So remember, the poem goes Che tadbir e musalmanan. So Rumi has in total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 poems. Let me zoom in a bit, inshallah, maybe we can actually see them better. Has in total 5 poems. Let's see if you can actually see them right there. There we go. So Rumi has in total 5 poems that begin with the letter Che and end with the letter Mim. So he says, Che dani toke, Che didam, Che ruz, Che kasam, Che nazdik ast. So these 4 poems, as you can see, none of them say Che tadbir. So basically, we can be guaranteed that that poem does not exist in this book, and this is the authenticated copy of all of Rumi's poems. So this is a conclusive refutation of that poem, inshallah. So if you ever see it posted anywhere, please do send them this video, whoever's posting it. All right, that's that, the conclusive refutation of this quote. I hope to never see it on the internet again. If you do happen to see it, you can tag the person under this Instagram video, or you can also send them the link to the video on YouTube. So hopefully they can stop posting it, and eventually we'll never see it ever. If you enjoy these videos, I urge you to join the Patreon. It's the best way that we can guarantee I can continue working on them at this pace while also continuing to post poems regularly on the page. It's quite difficult to do both at the same time. As you've seen, the videos take a lot of effort, and also the research that goes behind them. I mean, for every video, let's say if it's 10 minutes, an hour of research has gone behind that 10 minutes at the very least, if not more. And of course, there's other resources that we need to acquire, like primary sources, books, etc. So Patreon is really the best way to help guarantee that this project can continue with all of its expenses, time spent, etc. If you don't want to donate on a recurring basis, we do also accept one-time donations via Venmo, PayPal. The information for that is available on PersianPoetics.com. Other than that, there's nothing left for this video. So I'd like to wish that you have a good day. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.